warm welcome to our SABC parliamentary studios. I'm joined now by Home Affairs Minister Dr. Schreiber to speak to various issues that affect his portfolio. Minister, thank you so much for your time. Firstly, you've recently gazetted the vacancies within the Immigration Advisory Board. What's the aim of this board? What does it want to do?
Yes, great to be with you, Bulelani. Let me say right up front that the deadline for applications is the 7th of September. So if anyone's watching who has particular expertise in this area and wants to assist the department going forward on issues of immigration, please do apply. The purpose here really is to do what the law tells us this board is supposed to do. This Immigration Advisory Board comes many years. It's been in law for many years, but it hasn't been functional for quite a number of years now. And I think that's a missed opportunity, because if you look at what the law says, you actually through this mechanism can bring together people from Home Affairs, but people from other government departments as well, organized business, organized labor, as well as a number of independent experts when it comes to practitioners or policymakers in this area of immigration. And I think that you can draw on the strengths of all these different people to help deal with some of the difficult challenges we face in this country when it comes to immigration policy. So that really is the purpose of setting up the board. But I think it's also important to say that Home Affairs does struggle with stakeholder relations. I mean, we are in court far too much. I've said we need to be out of court and on to service delivery. And I am hopeful that if we are able to rebuild some of the relationships in the sector across different groupings, that will take some of the sting out of this relationship that's become very adversarial and really costs us a lot of money and time in court that we should be using delivering services. And I think therefore you actually deal with both of those issues by taking this advisory board seriously.
Illegal immigration in the country is quite a hot political potato. Your strategy in terms of how you will handle illegal immigration, what is it going to be? Have we been able to identify how many illegal immigrants are in the country?
Well, the root cause of this problem to me is very clear. South Africa's immigration system is fragmented. The systems aren't integrated. They're not modernized. Many of these things still happen with paper. And most importantly, they are often subject to human discretion, decisions around immigration. And that is what we need to tackle at its heart. We need to radically digitally transform Home Affairs. We need to do that in the immigration space, but in many other parts of our services, including the long queues that you deal with and getting things like ID documents and passports. At the heart of the challenge in Home Affairs is the fact that decisions are made by human beings, that systems don't speak to each other, that often applications are made and you can't even track what the status of that application is. That is what we really need to tackle at the core if we're serious about dealing with illegal immigration and many of the other challenges. Because
the number of illegal immigrants in the country, are you able to estimate?
I mean, at the end of the day, Stats SA tells us something, you have other researchers telling us another thing. That's not something that I can give you with absolute definitive clarity, and here's why. Because we don't have an integrated IT system that can answer that question. When people talk about the need for audits, I say audits must be 24/7. Think about the South African Revenue Service. They have built a very modern digital infrastructure that automatically flags when someone should be audited. It's not a question of discretion or a human decision. It says there's something fishy in this application, please audit this person. Why can't we have the same for Home Affairs? Then you don't have a once-off audit of this kind of issues and trying to establish the numbers, but in fact you integrate everyone, as we've done with SARS, into a digital system which automatically flags if Bulelani goes for an ID but there's already an ID on the system there, it must throw up an immediate red flag and then you audit in real time. So that's really where we need to go with this conversation. I've said to our officials, we can either spend the next 5 years being firefighters and just putting out fires 24/7, but then after these 5 years, the source of the fires will still be there. Or we'll need to be firefighters, deal with these issues as they emerge, but also become preventers of these fires. And that's where I think we need to go, by embracing modern technology.
How do we then get to the point where those who are not supposed to be in the country without the valid paperwork are actually ensured that they actually leave?
Yes, so I mean, the problem is we are so far behind the curve when it comes to modernizing our Home Affairs system that you first need to deal with things that are very technical and sound small in nature. So for example, let me give you a case. If someone applies for a particular visa, we'd like to automate the adjudication process. In other words, like you would do with any other online application, think about an online banking solution. You would fill in an application form. The computer would check whether this is accurate or whether all the information is there, first of all. Have you completed the whole document? Then you can click submit. Then the computer has to adjudicate, is the medical certificate that you provided, for example, is that a real certificate or is it a fake? Now, we live in the age of machine learning, and a computer can do that much better than a human can. So if you manage to build that kind of prototype where you're able for a computer to do these things, then over time we'll get to the case that you're talking about, because then we expand it across the system, and ultimately you're then able to say, but everyone must now be on this online system. All South Africans must be captured in this population register, and all your interactions with Home Affairs, whether you are leaving the country, whether you're applying for an ID, will all link back to a central point. Then we can say with absolute confidence that if someone is submitting an application for a residency or a visa or whatever the case may be, that either there's a flag that goes up and we can deal with that person. But where I think we really need to get, Bulelani, is to not allow these things to happen in the first place. That's the goal here. Someone mustn't be able to get an ID if someone already has that ID. Someone mustn't be able to get a visa or a passport when they are not qualifying and when they're not South African. The only way we're going to block that kind of corruption and malfeasance, which is committed by humans, is if we take human hands out of the process, automate the system, and say, like we do with SARS, that we're able to really prevent the kind of fraud happening in the first place. That's why I'm saying firefighting to deal with fires that are there. But really what I would like to do a few years down the line, if we chat again, is to be able to say now these fires are going to start getting less and less.
Let's talk about this incident of the Miss SA contestant whose identity was under question. How far is the department in terms of its investigation, whether she is indeed a South African?
Yes, well, what we've said clearly is that we have looked at this case seriously. We found indications of fraud committed years ago involving the person we've got in the record as the mother of this contestant, but very importantly that the contestant herself was an infant at that time, and so therefore you cannot draw conclusions about her involvement in that particular matter. However, we've also said that we need to conclude this investigation in a comprehensive manner to make sure that when we have our final findings and any action that may flow out of that we're not found wanting in terms of the legal process or what is required. So that's where we are at this stage. I can only add to that we're continuing to pursue this matter with urgency, really because it is a case study of the deficiencies.
When can we expect an answer or finality on the matter?
What I've said is as soon as possible. You must keep in mind, precisely because we don't have the integrated system I want, we are reliant on our people going out into the streets, into hospitals. You have to physically get all of these records, which many are still paper-based, in order to do a proper investigation. So as soon as possible is the answer. But really, I would plead with South Africans to look at this case study and say, how is it possible that these things are not integrated? How is it possible that you can't, with a click of a mouse, determine the full picture of what took place here? And of course, most critically, how was it possible for these indications we've seen of identity theft? How is it possible for these things to happen? And I hope that we can move the conversation towards that solution, which is really where we need to go and say, paper-based human interactions is something that belongs in the 20th century. We're now in the 21st century.
But Minister, you'd agree with me that there is quite a lot of interest in this particular case.
Yeah.
And even in your own investigations, you've said that there was identity theft on the side of the mother, allegedly. Like, if you want to create or give confidence into the country, obviously we'd expect that the criminal intention that the department wants must be done swiftly.
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying to you. If we don't only want to be seen to be doing the right thing, we must actually succeed. And for that to happen, we need to have a watertight case in this matter and many others that we are dealing with, to make sure that we've got, if there is criminality to be found here, that we've got a case that can be won. And we know how to do it. A week or two ago, we won a very important case where an official who was not only involved in a syndicate that was handing out, I think, over 190 different passports to people who did not qualify for them, and of course we cancelled those passports subsequently, but we managed to get a conviction even after she attempted to bribe one of our investigators. So we know how to do this, but it is very important that we have a watertight case, that we don't come out and prejudge things, which is also why we said at the beginning, we cannot respond on the basis of people not laying actual complaints. And so it was only when the organizers of this event laid a complaint, and we even obtained the consent of some of the people involved, that we were able to proceed and communicate about what we were finding. We were doing that because we can only restore the rule of law, which is what this is about, if we actually make sure that we ourselves uphold the law and the rights of all involved. So it's definitely a case that's receiving attention. That's why we're communicating as soon as we feel like we've got something to say, but we're also protecting the integrity of the process so that whatever the outcome is, no one can point a finger and say that it was handled incorrectly.
Thank you so much, Minister Dr. Leon Schreiber, Home Affairs Minister. We'll hold him to his word. We'd expect that investigation to be done as soon as possible. That's his words. On that note, I will cross back to you in Johannesburg.
Thanks very much, my colleague there, Bulelani Phillip.